this woman, and the woman had just found out about reincarnation and she said, reincarnation is so fantastic. We get to come back. Yes. All depends on where you're looking from.
It's like Serena. She said the same to me. We were speaking about death and dying, and she was like,
Action!
welcome to the Spirit of Yoga. We are Kirsten
And Devdas
from the Akasha Yoga Academy. In today's podcast, we explore the topic of renew from a yogic perspective, which is a little different than the common approaches. Renew, rebirth in a lifetime. It is something that everyone can relate to in one way or another. And everybody's yearning for that in some ways at some times down the journey. We want to look into what makes renew successful, permanent, lasting, transformative, really transformative, and where is it coming from that we keep on falling back and there's the intention, but somehow it's unfulfilled and the quantum leap is not taking place. And I think you are beautiful soul to speak to. I'm very happy to actually have the occasion to talk to you about that today.
You know, I was just reflecting before we came to the podcast. For those of you that don't know, Kirsten's actually my wife. But I was feeling like I'm so grateful that we have this chance to talk because
yes, I was thinking so too.
Because in our normal life, we don't always, children and responsibilities and all these things. And that's a little bit what our topic is today, right? Our topic is amidst the kind of chaos of life, of jobs, of commitments, of family, of how to keep totally fresh and unidentified amidst the crash of toys and schedules,
right,
and everything else.
So what is it that makes us unsuccessful? What makes us fail? Why are we held back? What is it that there is an urge, a seeing and understanding, okay, what I'm doing is not working. I guess many can relate to that. Me too. What I'm doing is not working, but what holds us back from change? Like, no matter how hard and clear the intention is, there's also again and again falling back, like, where is that coming from? Like, what is that? What's happening?
Like, I feel like there's multiple layers in that question. Like, the most kind of obvious layer is like, if you're intending as a yogi for the deepest potential transformation, you're not looking for reincarnation, you're looking for boundlessness. Like, that there is no boundary, there is no form, there is no... It's just the infinite presence is there. If that really is the intention of your heart, then you have to kind of put down your personal identity, basically. And people think that's hard. It's not hard. It's just, are you willing to put that down or not? Carlos Castaneda, this author, wrote, I put down my personal identity the same way that I put down the habit of drinking. Like, I just recognized, hey, that doesn't serve me or my life. Like, not going to touch it again. And that's the same potential exists in personal identity, right? It's like, wait a minute. that's not in service to me at all. Why would I keep this guy around? Like, throw him out the window. Don't pick him up again.
But if does, for some it's possible to put down the habit of drinking. For others, it is not.
Well,
What?
I don't think
Why
that
is
that's
it
really. I'm
failing?
not. I'm not actually so sure that that's true. It's like that depends on your own personal seeing,
Hmm.
right? It's like many people kind of fiddle faddle with drinking before they put it down, because I don't think they see how much harm it does to themselves. I don't think they see how much harm it does to other people in their life. And then at one point, you just wake up and you go, "Whoa!" Like, that's not like something that I want to be interacting with. Like, it's not having a positive effect on me. It's not having a positive effect on the people that I love, and I'm finished with that thing and I throw it out. Once it's really thrown out, like once it's really clear in your heart, this is like thrown out of my life and it's not coming back. Like, that feels to me like that's, and the same process is happening many times with people in their disidentification from the personal reality. It's like I'm kind of playing with it, like I'm a summertime friend, like
Mm.
I'm here with you when things are good, and we're playing around, and yeah, I don't have any identity and it's cool, man, and like that just means I can expand, and it's like then something comes that's like really going to check that, and that force that's going to check that is coming also from you, like because it's in your benefit that it be checked,
Right.
right? It's like
Right.
if you just live, oh yeah, man, everything's cool. No, no, it's all Brahma. Like it's nothing else. Like it's everything is coming from the one, except that, and also that, and maybe also not that. So okay, wait a minute, either everything or not, and then life comes to check. Like, how about if I put this in front of you? Now, is it still that everything is coming from the divinity? I'm not so sure. How about now? Uh, but at some point, it's like there's that clarity in your heart, the same as what I was saying about the drinking. It's like, no, this is personal identity is not in service to me or to my soul or anything else, and that doesn't mean that I feel like we have to be careful sometimes with words, because that can seem like then you don't even have a foot to get on the ground. It's like you don't know who you are. No, you know who you are. Like, the identity can play, but there's nothing that's like identified and suffering that identity and playing it out strongly. It's just like it's like a game that's happening in the great space of you, and that's in a weird way that's not for the faint at heart. I think it was I can never I think it's Krishnamurti that basically said, like, if you had the collapse of your personal identity happen, it's not necessarily that that would be good for you, that you would feel that that's good.
Right. 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 Right.
Because it's like, okay, it's as radical, it's maybe even more of a radical transformation. Like, if you look at someone's life and you say, okay, someone really had a problem with drinking and then they stopped drinking, that's a huge transformation. Like, that's not to be underestimated. That's a massive, 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 beautiful thing to step into. And going from the state of the personal identity and the suffering of the personal identity into freedom from that, it's as radical of a transformation or more radical of a transformation than letting go of a particular habit.
Yeah, that coming back to this idea of renew, like why is it sometimes successful and sometimes not, or oftentimes not? And I was just very recently very inspired by a teaching that I came across about seeing our lives approach to fixing or renewing ourselves by renewing, fixing the outer conditions. So if only that is fixed, I'm happy. If that is different, I am happy. So if I figure out this situation, then inside is good. And kind of the hopelessness of this approach, and a very clean, easy, direct solution to rather turn inwards and to look at the receiver rather than at the objects. And I feel, like I can try to stop drinking and just clear out my whole house from bottles, and I will not go into the bar, and I will just avoid the circumstances. It's an approach. Like just I keep myself away from that. But probably as soon as you are in the first situation that alcohol, the test just comes by, you're back in.
Can be. But this is I love what you're sharing, and I'm very touched by that sharing, and I feel like what's interesting is that from the perspective of a sage, in fact, one of the modern yogis said exactly this. What you're talking about is a slavery state. It's like, I've taken my joy, I've taken my peace, I've taken my contentment, and I've placed it on an outer circumstance that I have basically no control over. Like, I may have some tiny little bit of control over it, but probably not actually, right? Like, we don't get to say what happens with every single circumstance in our life. We just don't get to say that. And yet I've hung something so totally important as my own inner sense of well-being on that hook, which is completely unstable. It's like I've taken the most important thing in my life and I've hung it on a hook that's totally unstable, and I don't understand why I'm nervous. Well, I understand perfectly well why you're nervous. I'd be nervous if I was in that situation too, because you hung your happiness on something that is not stable
and out of your control.
And that's completely out of your control.
But isn't that how we approach life in general? Like, I need my job, my career fixed. I need to have my stable place to live, my home, my family, my friends, more.
What's interesting about that from a yogic perspective is it can be the opposite. Like, I just had a call with this beautiful woman from one of the courses that we're teaching online, and she said she sold everything. She sold her house, she sold her car, she sold everything. She goes traveling in the world. Total freedom. No one knows who you are. No one knows where you came from. You yourself don't know where you're going to sleep tomorrow night. It's just like, you are free. And, she went from that sense of expansive freedom where she said it was just every day was a joy. Every day was just like, what's going to happen? I have no idea. Like, I'm just meeting life as it is. And such a joy. And then at one point, travel finishes. Time to go back home. She goes back home, and she said it was just a constant struggle. Because everybody in your home, I know you, you're this person. No, you're not good at that. It's like everybody has 5,000 ideas about who you are and what you can do or what you can't do. And if you're prone to listening to those ideas, that can reignite your identity really fast. It's just like everybody has, and, there's this very touching, very interesting exchange that happens in the Bible when Jesus is preaching, then he goes back to his hometown. And in his hometown, he's not greeted with the same reverence that he's greeted in other places. And he says, a sage, when he comes back to his own town, is unknown because they say, look, that's the son of Mary. What does it mean? It's like, hey, we know that guy. He's this guy. Like, he used to do that. He used to play here. He used to go over there. Oh, he likes that. He doesn't like that. It's that all that identity is there, both in the people outside, and if that sparks it in you, back in your own identity. And that's one of the helpful concepts that the Buddhists have, actually. The Buddhists have this concept that the personal identity has a kind of like momentum behind it. So it's like you drop your personal identity and it's gone. And you're like, hey, look at that. Hallelujah. Fantastic. Things are going great. And then it comes and catches you again. And because it has a kind of a momentum. But the fact that it has momentum, it just like ties back to what I was talking about earlier. Is that bad? No, it's good. It's like that's your chance to check in and see.
Yeah.
Was the operation a success? You know, now here comes this picture from your past. Here comes this person. They think you're this way. Here comes this old triggering situation. And, you know, are you going to be triggered? Like, are you going to go back into the old pattern of how you acted? And I think we talked about this on a previous podcast, but regularly people come to me on Zoom and say, I was in a situation. I saw that my old self would have acted this way, and there was no temptation in myself to act that way. I can act however I want. So, wow. Don't underestimate that. Like, that's a huge victory. Because that's saying, the past came to check me. Oh, that's Mary's son. Oh, that guy's this way. Oh, that's nothing. You know? That's just some old something coming around to have a conversation.
So renew, that's our topic. Renew from within rather than renewing basically conditions. Like there's a renew, I just change cities, I change job, I change habits, I change whatnot, and surprise, it's not working. Like I have the new job, I find myself in the same conditions. I have a new relationship, I just quit my old relationship. I have a new romantic relationship. Very soon, I'm basically in the same situation. So renew from, it needs to come from a different place than from changing outer circumstances, even though I feel there is an important power in changing circumstances. Definitely. As the woman was describing. Or a drinker, don't put yourself surrounded by bottles and just stop drinking. Put them aside, like give yourself space.
Yeah.
But like, what is it that makes the renew, you know, lasting, successful? And I very recently am very inspired by checking in when it comes to renew. Where's the place that it comes from? And it was a big realization for me to contemplate the position of the mind in the process of renew. The mind being, and as that kind of really dropped, I was like, okay, something different has to operate here. Like as long as the renew is based on the mind, it's not a renew really.
No.
Because the mind is an accumulation of past experiences, mine or my own past experiences, or past experience, lived life of somebody else.
Yeah.
And to base a renew on the past is not radical, it's not a fundamental renew, because we are operating in the familiar schemes, in the familiar, we take the familiar rules and a familiar board game, and we try to play new.
Yeah.
But there's only so much freedom in that. It's quite a limited freedom. Okay, and maybe I go this way or a little bit more like that.
Yeah.
But as long as the place is my past experience and the realities that I can project through my past experiences and through my thought process, it's not radical, it's not fundamental, it's not complete. It's
and in a weird way, like, I'm very grateful for that also. Like, in a weird way, that's what the mind wants, actually. Like, they asked people across every socioeconomic background in the United States, how much more financial success would you like? And almost everybody said 10% more. Like, that's exactly what you're talking about. Like, I could change the circumstances of the game. I can change the rules of the game. What do I get? 5%, 10%. It's like, from a yogic standpoint, is 5% or 10% enough? It's like, it doesn't make any difference at all, more or less. It's basically the same thing. Like, and at some point when you realize that, it's like, whoa, 10% is like not even an option. It's like, I want 100%. Like, and it really does come down to that much. It's like, is it a 5% life or is it a 100% life?
Right.
Because is it a 5% life? For many people, it is. It's like, okay, I'm going to change the circumstances. I'm going to change the rules. I'm going to change something. And will that get better? Yeah. Like 5% better. Like, is 5% better going to satisfy the longing of your soul for freedom? It will not. Like, and that has to be absolutely unequivocal. It will not satisfy on that level. That said, it is better than just sitting on the couch, right? Like, so you can have your 5%, and maybe for some people that's fine. Once a friend of mine was talking to this woman, and the woman had just found out about reincarnation and she said, reincarnation is so fantastic. We get to come back. Yes. All depends on where you're looking from.
It's like Serena. She said the same to me. We were speaking about death and dying, and she was like, okay, so will you again be my mama? Like, will I find you?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But what I find a really important point is never enough. Like, I change, it's not enough. Only if I arrive, it's not enough. Like, there is something really in our experience, in our human experience, of never enough. And it's kind of almost a bit looked down to in spirituality, like this never enough. Like, but actually there is also an interesting power to that, because this is exactly this power that takes us from at one point not reaching for 10%, but going for 100%.
Absolutely. It's very important, actually. That kind of, I actually feel like that's the soul's desire for boundlessness that's expressing itself.
Yeah.
And it starts by expressing itself in 5%. It's like, can I make my situation better? Can I grow? Can I learn? Can I shift the circumstance? And yeah, it can. But then at some point, even that is just like, wow, I'm not there. Like, I'm not in my boundlessness. I'm still playing in the kind of like narrowness of personal identity. And then that's back to kind of Carlos Castaneda's sharing. It's just like, wait a minute, like, what's this? I gotta just like put that thing out. And that really is, I think, like a desire of the soul.
Yeah.
Like, one of the great modern yogis described the ego as the soul, which is infinite, boundless, perfect, identified with the body-mind structure, which is faulty, limited, and going to stop at some point in its journey.
Finite,
so it's like, the boundlessness starts to think, I'm this thing, and it's like it's a time limited thing, and not only is it a time limited thing, it's actually a very fragile thing. It's like, when you really look at life, it's like none of us have a guarantee on tomorrow. It might be there, but it also might not. And that's that's what we were talking about earlier. That's a very fragile place to hang your, you know, existence, when it's like, wait a minute, inside of us is this boundless nature that we all on some level are deeply and profoundly yearning for. And that can sound like anti-life, that can sound like, oh, like he's saying there's something wrong with life. No, there's nothing wrong with life. Life is fabulously beautiful and something to be extremely, extraordinarily grateful for with profound reverence. But only if it's boundless. And that is because of actually how we're made. It's like we are boundless. And for a time we forget, and then we're identified. And then once we're identified, we yearn to come back into the boundlessness. And that's just how we're made. It cannot be other than that.
But it's not so clear to everybody. Like there's a lot of struggle with that and through that and by that, like this daily betterment, frustration, never enough. There's frustration in it. There is something deeply unsatisfying in it. There is something that lets life seems like it's a suffering. It's
because it cannot be other than that. Like, I remember in my university days in philosophy, most men lead lives of quiet desperation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's one of the great philosophical statements of the West. Is most people live lives of quiet desperation. Desperation, their soul is desperate to expand. Desperate. Quiet. They don't talk about it. They don't say anything about it because they're not quite sure how to do it. Like, when you're at that point, yoga. Like, that's the first line of the Yoga Sutras. Now comes the study of yoga.
Yeah.
What is the now? It means I tried other things. Like, I tried this, I tried that, I tried 5%, I tried 10%, I tried to make it this way. None of it gave me what my heart longed for. So now comes the study of yoga. That's the blessing.
I would love to give back yoga the power that it has. Yoga is spreading so much far and wide and everywhere, but this power is not behind.
Yeah. I mean, I see it all around the world through Zoom with people, and I went to my local studio, and this is what I found. Now, it's not all that way. Sometimes people have very, very beautiful experiences, and sometimes I'm shocked the other direction. Like, okay, I went to my class and we did mantras and we did, deep breathing work and we did yoga and we did asana, and it was all so beautiful, and both are potentials. But there are many communities in which that option is completely not there. Like, the option of something deep and powerful is just absent from that environment. And it's like, if you live in that environment, what's your impression of yoga going to be? It's the impression that's there in popular media. It's like yoga's a fitness flexibility routine, mostly for women. It's like, whoa, man. That's
But it's so interesting that the yearning for yoga is there. Yoga somehow makes it meet the yearning.
Yeah.
But it's not filled.
Yeah.
Yoga doesn't live up to its promise.
Yeah.
We can say, because there's no power behind.
Yeah. But it also, like, I feel like it can also like just the technology is so native to us as human beings that it can also plant a seed. You know, it's like because somehow your soul knows. And like that's what's interesting in the is like even if you're in the midst of the suffering and you believe absolutely my life is quiet desperation only, you still don't believe that 100%. Like something inside of you knows its boundlessness and remembers its boundlessness. And you know, just today on the Zoom call, we had a woman from the 300-hour course sharing about an out of body experience that she'd had, a near death experience that she'd had that totally changed her life and her perspective. And when I was hearing it, I was feeling like it's so easy to mistake the reality or the theory versus the experience. It's like someone can tell you there's life after you die and you know you'll be cared for and there's nothing to worry about. And it can mean nothing.
Yeah.
It's just like that's something that I just read in a book. I have no actual experience. Then you hear somebody who has actual experience. You hear the power behind those words. She was sharing it. It was quite cute actually. She was sharing, I left the body. I was in the presence of the divinity, whatever you want to call that. And then she said, the hard part wasn't being out of the body. The hard part was that they wanted her to come back. And she was like, I'm not really interested, you know, I'm happy on this side. And they were like, no, you have, you know, you have some work to do. It's time to go back. And she did go back. But when you hear those words spoken from somebody as experience, they just render differently inside of your heart. It's like, you know, that wasn't something that she, and that experience completely transformed her life. Basically, you have before that experience happened in her life and after that experience happened in her life, because it totally turned around lots of the ideas that she had about, you know, spirituality and God and religion and, you know, all these things just turned on their head because it wasn't any more theory. It was like, this is my actual experience. I know this. And I was kind of trying to gently suggest to her to write that down and begin to share it. Because like the difference between actual experience and theory from a yogic perspective is all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
Right? It's like talking about a theory that you read versus being able to stand behind that and say like, no, I know, you know, I know with my soul in a way maybe I cannot even put into words perfectly, but I know that this is this way.
I think because the theory is a yesterday of yourself or others, and it is not life.
Yeah.
It is not alive. And like beautiful, this is radical rebirth in a lifetime. Like that's a actual rebirth in a lifetime.
Complete.
Provoked by an extreme circumstance or situation. Coming back more practical, you know, how to rebirth. Like you have really the feeling enough, you know it's enough, you know this you saw. How do you drop? What do you do? Do you do anything? Like what's...
I mean, you just open yourself up, like I'm going to tell a story about my beautiful wife. My beautiful wife came the other day and said, Devdas, you've said to me so many times, if I go with the projection of my mind or the assumption of my mind, that I limit the outcome of the situation. That's what I heard that you said. And you said, suddenly I now understand that's not it. It's like, wow, that's not a small recognition. You know, that's a huge recognition. Like, so if you have that level of recognition, then just stay with that moment by moment. You know, it's like, am I recreating this as a projection of my past and my past experience? Or am I just here to see what miraculous thing can happen to my life when I just hand it back to existence? And, you know, that I think like that can seem to people like, okay, that's a small thing. It's not a small thing. It's absolutely huge. It's like you've given your life to life. And then life itself is taking care of you. And that's a little bit like what we were just talking about with this woman, right? It's like I left the body. I was profoundly, profoundly and deeply cared for. Everything in nature is also the same, right here, right now. Like the birds in the field, they have what they need. They're cared for by life. How much more you? But when you like project forward from this, you get what you project, right? It's like you don't get the unlimited, you get the limited, because you've already packaged the outcome. It's like you've boxed up the outcome, but you want the outcome to be limitless. It's like, well, the outcome will not be limitless because you already boxed it up.
Right.
But if you really say, okay, you know, I pass myself into the Spirit. I pass myself into the hands of the Spirit. I just let my life be completely cared for. And it's not to say that that's effortless. There was a beautiful man in one of the calls recently who said, he gave his life to Spirit fully. And then he said at one point the cards weren't looking so good, you know. He said, I have $100 in my bank account. I don't know what's going to happen, you know. But he kept his trust, you know. He kept his faith, and it came beautifully. Like, you know, it unfolded beautifully. But if you kind of look at it from the outside, it's not always that it's just going to be flowers, but you have an internal sense that it's right.
Mm.
You know, that's what we were talking about a little while ago, right? You and I, like this sense that I'm in the right place, I'm doing the right thing, I'm cared for by the profound intelligence of life. It is irreplaceable. Like no amount of money, no amount of fame, no amount of anything can give you that feeling. Like I'm exactly in the right place. I'm doing exactly the right thing. And it may be that there's $100 in my bank account. Or it may be that, you know, life situations are not seemingly to my advantage. But in my heart, I know where I am. You know, I know the truth of and the surrender and the joy of the beautiful participation in life. And that satisfaction, you cannot buy it. You cannot get it anywhere. It only comes from the boundlessness of your own self-discovery.
Yeah, I feel it's an important learning that I received through you. A respect of a very individual rhythm of seeing, a very individual rhythm of growing, of waking up, and there's not so much what the individual itself can do about it in a way. I found that a really, really very compassionate and very helpful seeing in a way. That we're just in so different stages of maturing, of ripening, and there's just an inner recognition that has to take place, that truly has to take place, that cannot be put on, that cannot be mentalized, understood, learned from a book. I guess it can be transmitted by a guru. But this respect of life, the rhythm of life, basically, I find extremely freeing in meeting myself and meeting what's happening around. I feel it brought a lot of peace to expectations, restlessness, wanting things to be a certain way, because it is about us and also not.
Right.
Like
Wow.
there's so much about our personal will, but only so much.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know so my teacher in India, like when I first came to him, in some ways I was quite surprised that he had a lot of emphasis on individuality. And what he said about individuality is it means what it says. Individual means that which cannot be further divided. Right? Like undividable.
Yeah.
Like the undividable essence of you. It has a kind of an integrity. It has a wholeness, actually. Like,
yeah.
And, you know, I think that's why, like, definitely in Akasha, but also just in general in yoga, like, one of the values that's worth contemplating is authenticity. Because it's like, only you can be you.
Yeah.
And there's something so, like, that can sound kind of at first a bit, but at some point it's like, wow, that's not a small gift, actually. Like, you know, only you can express what you are meant to express in this world. And there's something profoundly, deeply beautiful about that. And I think it ties back a little bit to what we were talking about earlier, like the sense of being in the right place. You know, like, is there an urgency? Even with this woman who was sharing on the call that I was talking about earlier, she said, there's an urgency or a compulsion almost. She couldn't quite find the word for my yoga practice. It's like, it's not optional for me. Like I see it's optional for people. For me, it's not optional. It's like I have to do it. And I felt, like this is it.
Yeah.
You know, like it's not a summertime activity. Like you're in it.
Yeah.
And if that's your approach, great fruit will come from that. You know, I was saying, okay, in any act of genius, there must have been some compulsion also. Like when Beethoven was writing his symphonies, you think he was just sitting there going, oh, you know, I could write a symphony, or maybe not, or maybe I'll just go to the beach. No,
Yeah.
like something needed
Yeah.
to express itself,
And
it came like that. And, you know, when you have that, and this is a kind of a very different way of seeing than the worldly seeing. Like she was saying, when will that be finished? And I was saying, is that what Beethoven said? Like at the end of his life, do you think he was like, oh, that's it, everything that I needed to write was written? So, not at all. Like he has the sense that he's doing what he's supposed to be doing, and the songs are coming, and he's part of that coming, and you know, it's like there's, at the end of life, there would be no sense of just like, that's supposed to be over now. It's like, because that's the song that's singing. Like that was his song, literally in his case, but more metaphorically, like, you know, what's expressing through him is being expressed. It's like it's meant to be that. And there's a compulsion for that. Yes, there is a compulsion for that, because he's expressing what he's meant to express. When you're in the right place and you're doing the right thing and you're doing what your soul's meant to be doing, is there a compulsion? Yeah, huge. Like there's a huge compulsion that's saying, get the song sung. And, you know, for everybody, that song's going to be different. For some people, it's going to be teaching yoga. For some people, it's going to be something totally different than that. For some people, it's writing songs. For some people, it's working in some NGO. It can be anything. Like, but there's a sense. Like, I'm doing, that's what they call dharma in India, right? Like, I'm doing the thing that's right for my soul. Like, the right action, the right thing, the right expression is happening. And that feeling of right place, right time, right situation, right expression, that's the priceless. That's the gem. That's the, you know, that's what you cannot buy. That you're in a dance with the boundlessness. And then reincarnation happens by itself. That's like bringing us back around full circle to the topic. One of the great yogis of the modern world said, every breath is a miniature death. Every inhalation, new life. Every exhalation, the end of the show, reincarnation. For people that don't believe in reincarnation, that's what I often say. Okay, doesn't matter, you believe in reincarnation or you don't. You've reincarnated 100 times in this lifetime, or let's say at least 10. Like, you thought you were this, you thought you were that, you thought you were the other thing, and then you discovered, oh, wait a minute, it's not that. And then you're playing around with the 5% that we were talking about earlier. But then at some point, you're like, wait, 5%. Like, I trade that for I'm in the right place, doing the work that I'm meant to be doing. And, you know, that's some kind of powerful gift. Mm.
I enjoyed so much our conversation, Devdas. I'm very happy we got some time to talk.
Me too. Mm.
So this was today Wisdom in Motion with the Akasha family. Keep on shining in the spirit of yoga.